And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're receiving this information. My name is Rafael Vasquez. And again, we are here, Lideres del Futuro on KBBF, bilingual radio, kbbf.org. And today we have Rocio Pineda, someone I have known, I believe, most of her life. And I am privileged to have her here. She's a poet, a wonderful poet, and she is now at the university. She's 1 year from graduating from the university, and my goal is that eventually she will take her poetry to either teach or maybe write books. And so, Rocio, thank you for being here with us today. I know that you're going to be sharing some poems with us. Can you tell us what university you're attending now? And how do you feel about, again, just starting soon you'll start your last year at the university?
Okay. Hi, Rafa. I attend California State University, Monterey Bay, and I feel ready to graduate. So taking all the major requirements to graduate spring 2022. And I'm also finishing up my creative writing and social action minor.
And one of the things that you are doing at the university, not now because of COVID, but that you were doing right before COVID, was you used to have your own radio show where you would share poetry, your poetry, but also other famous authors' poetry. What attracts you about poetry? What calls your attention to poetry?
Um, so when I first started writing poetry, I wrote it because I took this class with a teacher who showed me that poetry isn't just old dead white guys and what they have to say, that it's also what I have to say. So, what really attracts me is that it's very liberating and that I can express myself in poems that I sometimes can't in just like regular words.
Yeah.
Because you can draw imagery from it. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second question.
Well, no, again, this call your attention to it, and I think that poetry again is an art. I think the other piece that is important here, and that you mentioned just now, is a lot of the time when you go to an English class or a creative writing class in the United States, they want to throw Shakespeare at you, and they want to throw all of these
Yeah.
people. But nobody talks about Pablo Neruda. Nobody talks about Mistral. Nobody talks about Eduardo Galeano. Nobody talks about any of that stuff. In teaching at Santa Rosa Junior College, I remember years back that a former colleague of mine said, if you're going to teach a Latin America and the Caribbean class, make sure that you talk about all of those writers. And if people tell you, why is it that you're focusing on all those individuals and philosophers from Latin America and not the European, right, the white writers? You need to be able to stand your ground and say, why is it that we are not talking about everybody, right? So I'm glad that you're doing your own writing. I'm glad that you have your show. And again, hopefully, once we get back to quote unquote normal, and you are able to return to the university, hopefully you'll get your show back. I used to tune in, and it was always exciting. You would come up with different poems, and at the same time, people were able to let you know, hey, can you read this poem? I really like this poem. And your interpretation of a lot of the poetry is just beautiful. So let's get started with your first poem. This is a powerful poem that you recently participated in a competition and you got the first prize.
Thank you. Um, the world stays quiet on Sundays. 1. His first words weren't mom or dad, it was fear and pain. Drunk was his father's name. Clouds of grief and pity, pit pit pattering down laugh lines. A mother clutches her 24-year-old baby, spilling red love songs on pavements. 2. Oh, you got melanin? Streets are war zones with police pulling the trigger, chalk outlines on asphalt, smoking guns, not at fault, not hand delivered, half assed apologies written on billboards. 3. I Can't Breathe was captured on national television. Eric Garner couldn't breathe, and George Floyd couldn't either, and Breonna Taylor was breathless, and Patrick Warren was breathless, and Trayvon Martin was breathless, and Andy Lopez was breathless, and Rayshard Brooks was breathless, and body smack pavements every split second. 4. Heartbreak doesn't keep the world from spinning. Court cases are prolonged and drop, bodies drop, charges drop, lungs collapse, and hearts stop beating. Thank you.
And again, that's a perfect example of how you just described such a challenging moment for our society. The police executing children like Andy Lopez in the streets of Santa Rosa, California, right? We have our brothers and sisters and non-gender conforming individuals named George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the fact that there is no justice, right? With Andy Lopez, the police officer, the sheriff individual, not only was he able to then move up higher in the ranks and retire and will always have plenty of money, but Andy Lopez's family will never be able to have peace because there was no consequence. Our Native American brothers and sisters continue to suffer, and often their cries for assistance are not there. Our Native American sisters in Sonoma County and surrounding counties are disappearing every week, and the FBI and other law enforcement agencies fail completely to investigate their disappearance. Yet, if it was a white person that had disappeared, you would have a different reaction. We need to be honest. And the thing I really love about your poetry is that is raw, is direct, is honest, and it tells people maybe how we should be feeling, right? And we joined you in that pain, and we joined you in that anger, and we joined you in that frustration. And I think that that is why I love, again, your poetry, and I appreciate that you're taking the time to be with us today. Could you share with us another one of your poems? I believe you have one about your mom or moms in general.
So yeah, I wrote this for my poetry class, and the topic was music and media, and so I decided to write about my relationship with my mom and also like my relationship with like music and movimiento y todo eso. So yeah, this one is called "There's Enough Merengue in My DNA to Awaken Dead Limbs." Mi lengua conoce el ritmo, the way a blind man knows Braille, or the way mi abuelo sabe bailar. My mother is threaded silk as she cradles me, con cumbia y pedazo de pastel. My mother loves bachata, with sunlit cobwebs streaming in, laughter brimming her ojos de café y chocolate. We are moving to the beat of the drum. Me, her, and my two left feet. My beauty lies in the curves I felt in my mother's womb. My mother's ombligo, like a telephone cord, cinching reggaeton around my cintura. There's enough merengue embedded in my DNA to awaken these dead limbs, these caderas y rollos. My mother, who was taught by her mother to dance in the rays of the moonlight, to dance under rocios de la lluvia, to dance like freedom.
And again, it's for those of us who are immigrants to this country, when we have our children, we have choices as to whether or not we're going to continue to pass our cultural values, beliefs, and norms, and that includes music. And again, your descriptive words are just amazing. As you are reading this to us, all I can think of is imagining, right, all of these movements. We're talking about reggaeton, and you're talking about cumbia. You're talking about, all of these beautiful pieces for those of us who are familiar with it. And for those of us who know your mom personally, right? I can imagine your mom carrying you at a young age. And again, just that family history that is there. So I'm really grateful that those of us who have known you long enough can join you in that experience through your art. And again, poetry, as I've mentioned many times, is like visual art, is like a painting of Maria de los Angeles. I remember a couple of years ago, Maria de los Angeles did a show here in Santa Rosa, California. It's a beautiful paintings, very, very nice paintings. And she was talking to me. She stares at one of the paintings and she says, "Oh, I need to fix that." And it's like, there is nothing to fix. But as an artist, a painting is never done. And I'm assuming that as a poet, right? Sometimes you go back and you're like, oh, how can I make it better? Or maybe how can I change this, right? And for us, we're just grateful that we are part of the experience. But for you as an artist is a little bit different, right? So what a beautiful thing, right? Do you go back to your poetry once in a while and check it and want to move it around or do something with it?
Oh, of course. All of my poems go through a lot of revisions and rough drafts before I feel like they're polished enough to share with others.
Yeah, because I was mentioning that when are you going to write your book on poetry? And you were saying, before this, that you don't have enough, you don't feel that you have enough poems that are polished and ready to do that with. Yet again, this is exactly what we're talking about, right? As an artist, how do you determine when they're ready? That's the question, right?
I think it depends for everyone, but when I determine it's ready is that I'll read it and I'd be like, this is it. Like, this is ready to be shared. I feel like I've put like my own heart and soul into every word, and I don't think there's anything left to edit.
Definitely. Good. And what other poem would you like to share with us today?
Okay, so this one was another one for my poetry class, but the reason behind it is we had to talk about society or social movement, and I wanted to talk about immigration. And so it started off, it's like, oh, if my dad got deported, and then I upped up the stakes and I said, well, what if my dad died? So,
Mhm.
and the title is part of the poem. If my dad died today, I would ask the coroner to check again. I can hear his heart beating, rushing oxygen to his brain cells, calling me Betty La Fea with popcorn on Sundays and Sundays with extra whipped cream. I get my sweet tooth from my dad, who prefers pan dulce with the saccharine creamer filling the brim of his I don't have kids before my first sip mug. I'd never wake up in the morning without sadness wedged on the edge of my skin. His fingers create melodies, sing Las Mañanitas, and talk about building casitas in Mexico. If my dad died today, my world would fall off its axis. He is Atlas, carrying the memories of yellow raincoats, sending sunshine and a smile while it pours down on the rest of the world. If he died, I would be dying too. Heartbreak would rearrange oxygen to create gone XY. X stands for kisses, and Y speaks for itself. If my dad died today, I would bury him with his reading glasses so he could read las letras de aprecio y amor de sus niños.
And again, the for those of us who have lost somebody, right? It brings it back. And not in a negative way. It allows us to reconnect with that person. It allows us to remember again those hugs, right? I lost my brother when I was 18, and he was like a father to me. And I often don't talk about this. There's still some pain there, but the way you say it, right, as you're reading this beautiful poem, it reminds me of him teaching me to fish. It reminds me of him carrying me when I cried when I was little. It reminded me of so many things. And I've heard you read this poem multiple times by now, and yet there's always something new that comes back. And so, again, a reminder for parents, a reminder for community members who are, again, participating with us today, who are remembering a loved one. It's healthy to remember a loved one. The last thing we want is for that individual to pass on and be completely forgotten, right? So your poetry allows us to go back and think of this, and not in a painful way, but in a way where we can rejoice about the fact that they don't have to suffer anymore, and that we can carry them with us all the time in our hearts. So I'm grateful again about that poem. What other poems did you bring? I think we said maybe you had 6 poems. So far we've gone through 3. So let's see what you have next.
So this one is a bit more of like a heartbreak. Um, so it's called Kiss Every Mole on My Skin or Say Goodbye with Your Lips after JC and Robert Frost. I wanted you to yearn for me. In the bluntest way, have your fingers itch to touch every dip in my skin. Give me more than leftover kisses. I wanted you to love the heart of me, the broken of me, hidden behind bookshelves with books in every genre except fairy tale. I wanted you to see the glue barely holding me together and think of Picasso, think of beauty at the tips of your fingers. I wanted to grow old with you. Grandkids, gray hairs, and wrinkled smiles. I wanted the vibration of I love you to stir something inside of you. I have battle scars on my soul and skin, peeled layers of my flesh, inch by inch, hoping you would accept the darkest parts of me. The taste of disappointment lingers inside my hollow cheeks. You are the summer I rather forget. It's better to recognize you as frozen fragments of ocean waves in my hair and sweet puppy dog kisses on my collarbone. Let the ocean dry the tears that once burned me, because I once said, Bésame, mi amor, bésame con tu alma, con la luna del mar y tus labios de miel. Consume me with your tongue, savor the salt on my skin, take the road less traveled, leave a trail of kisses down the base of my spine.
And again, poetry, right? Poetry can express love, can express anger, can express frustration. And I love the fact that the poems that you have chosen allow us to have all of these experiences, right? The first love, the first love that maybe ended up in problems or whatever it was, or maybe in sadness, right? Because we loved them more than they loved us, or there was whatever type of trauma that didn't allow this love to flourish, yet you experienced that. And as people say, your first love is something you will never forget. So thank you for allowing us to remember those experiences. And for the younger community that is listening to this information, again, when your time comes for that first love, right? Remember this beautiful poem that you're sharing with us today. Thank you for that. What else do you have? I'm really excited about whatever else you have for us now.
Okay, so this one is called 3 Minute Phone Call, and I wrote it a year or two ago when my brother was in jail. So, Hey, are you there? Can you feel the vibrations of my voice traveling through the cord of this outdated phone? Can you? There is so much I want to tell you in the span of this 3-minute call. I won't make the same mistake you did with Dad. I will tell you how much I love you, how much it hurts to breathe when the click indicates our call is up. You sit in jail while I hang worry on racks in my closet. You don't call me the next day on the scheduled time you're supposed to. Like routine. As routinely as you brush your teeth or tie your shoes or kiss your mother goodbye. When was the last time you kissed our mom goodbye? When was the last time I saw you in person without silicone glass pretending to be your flesh? You don't think I worry after you told me someone got poked again, which was a nice way to tell me someone got shanked again, and now you're in lockdown. We both saw our father face down while an officer of the law tried to handcuff him. But beforehand, he had broken Daddy's wrist to his elbow. You see, Daddy wasn't putting up a fight. Daddy was drunk, and Daddy smelled like all Mexican dads do. Deadbeat. Or at least, that's the way our daddy smelled. And the officer didn't have to be so cruel. Not when 4 brown-eyed children were watching and 3 were asleep on the bed. And when they took Daddy away, Mommy lied sweetly and said, Daddy just gone to Mexico. My brother, who's only known the whisper of his old man's name, clung to our dad like armor, hoping a father's love could shelter him from the world's cruel injustices. The only time I ever saw my brother break down, crying, sobbing on his knees, praying to a God that may or may not exist, was when our dad went to jail. I love you got caught in the lump of my brother's throat. He fell into the stereotype that comes with daring to be anything other than white. He sits in jail, rotting his beautiful mind and spoon feeding me beautiful lies. He's alone in the darkness. I can feel it. You see, the caged bird doesn't know how to sing like Maya Angelou had suggested. Teeth are gilded cages for pretty words that'll never be spoken. Resistance dies on the tongue. F the legal system, meant only to condemn the ones with roots dug into other countries. It's like they want to uproot our culture and deny our generational suffering. Click, your call is up.
Wow. The level of, there's so many pieces on that one, right? The level of trauma that we all go through when we have alcoholic parents, the consequences of their actions, right? And the fact that if we don't heal from our own trauma, which is something I focus a lot on, not just on the show, but in general, in my classes and everything else, if we don't focus on our trauma, again, trauma is the gift that keeps on giving, says Dr. Maria Hess, psychotherapist, a friend of mine. And it's true, right? Like if we don't take it serious enough, we can end up in jail. We can end up alcoholics. We can end up in abusive relationships. So again, I really appreciate all the diverse poetry that you write. I personally think that definitely those poems are polished enough to go to print. And again, I hope that you continue to do this. I think you have a gift. And I think that you need to read one last poem for us so that then we can, again, culminate this process of ups and downs and experiences. So, whatever poem you choose, it's definitely something that we need to enjoy and at the same time reach some type of conclusion to.
Okay, so I wrote this poem after my mom was talking about the elections and how the presidents, either one wasn't a good option. Um,
Mhm.
so, complaints from a Salvadorian mother. It doesn't matter who governs Capitol Hill because it will never be in the best interest of the people. I just want to know when the president will lower the prices for aguacates and fix our trade routes. Why are gas prices so damn high? There's no one going anywhere anyway. We wear our mask to vote, but there's no difference between Biden or Trump. We'll have 4 more years of effery either way. Politicians say for the people while they line their pockets with greed and greens, yet no one can find the solution to quarantine. Yeah.
The beauty of it, right? The politics that go, the reality that we have to have this honest conversation. There's a beautiful poem, I guess, that I saw right around the elections that says, "What if I told you that whether it is the left or the right, the right wing and the left wing, that they are both wings of the same bird." And it's so
Mhm.
true, right? Like, and I mentioned this on the show many times, that whether you go Republican or whether you go Democrat, the reality is politicians are in it for themselves first. Rule one of being a politician is to get reelected. Rule two is to give money back in whatever tax breaks to the uber wealthy that donated to their campaigns. And about 27 steps later is the interest of the people that they're representing. So again, I'm grateful that you have taken us through this journey of some of your poetry. And again, I look forward to the day when you're ready to publish your first book. I also have recommended many times to you that you should start teaching writing because you
Yeah.
have the skills. And there are some some poets that choose not to teach because it's different than actually doing your own work. Sometimes it's frustrating to see that you know what you want to see, that that person's idea is going to eventually bring up, but they're not getting to where they need to be. It's almost like therapy, and you're the therapist and you want this person to understand that they are the victims of domestic violence and that is not acceptable, whatever the situation is, and you want to get there 6 months earlier, right? So teaching may not be for everybody, but I think you have a gift. And I'm grateful that you have given us a few minutes of your time with some of your poems. And I hope that you're able to get back to the university and restart your beautiful show. Um, I think it was Poetry with Ro.
Yeah.
Was that the name of it? Yeah. And again, I really enjoy it. It was at the end of the day, uh, I could just sit back, relax, listen to your poetry and the poetry that you took from other people to share with us. And I look forward to our next conversation. I think that, again, the more you write, you're always welcome to come to the show. You're always welcome to share this. I think that, again, poetry can make us feel better. It can allow us to release some stress, anger, frustration. And due to COVID, many of us have either lost somebody or have lost a year of our life. And I think your poetry has given us the opportunity to, again, just take a moment and say, okay, I can focus on something else for a minute. So thank you for doing that. Rocio Pineda, thank you for taking the time and being with us.
Gracias, Rafa.